Hey, this is part two. If you're interested in seeing part one, just click the link in the description or the info card right now. If you're not interested or you're coming here from part one, then just keep on watching. Next, we're talking about another Beat on the Brat mission. Beat on the Brat, Rancho Coronado. This one's just going to go in the B tier.
No. When the cash comes in, it just muddles the whole sport. I'm here for fights, and the fights alone.
This one's just an okay Beat on the Brat mission. It's fine. You fight an animal opponent named Rhino. She's interesting enough, I suppose. It's totally okay. It is actually sort of a interesting engagement. The other fights on the Beat and the Brat quest can vary from engaging, like this one, or not really that interesting, like some of the other ones we'll talk about. But it is actually an engaging fight. It's a decent fight. That's what puts it in the B tier and elevates it above the C tier. And again, I mentioned how it plays into the For My Son gig as well. So it's interesting that it has synergy there with a gig. Outside of that, it's just kind of whatever though. B tier, decent, fun, but not groundbreaking by any stretch. Next, we have two missions that I don't care for. First off, we have A Day in the Life. That's going to be a D tier mission.
Listen, boss, you help me out? Kids on the block been out my ass lately, and you seem real tough.
A Day in the Life. This mission sucks. There's no interesting characters here, but at least they are named. This mission, V goes to a food stand. There's a couple punks who try robbing his motorcycle, and then you go talk to them, and then they leave. You get a discount at a food vendor to the extent that you care about that. For doing this mission, it's a very short mission. All told, it's probably about 4 or 5 minutes long. I don't really get the point of it. It's a world building mission. It's a world building in that we see a bunch of street kids kind of interact with the way Night City works. Apparently this vendor's sister ends up working for Zeta Tech, which is a big corporation, and they're upset about that. I don't know. If we ever saw these characters again, maybe this would mean more to me, but as it stands right now, the only thing you get out of it is a discount at a food vendor, of which there are many in the city, of which also money is not hard to come by, of which also food and drinks and stuff like that are already very affordable in the game and likely won't ever be used. At least I never find a reason to use them. Technically, you can use these consumables to give you buffs and stuff. I never really find a reason to need them. So I don't really understand this mission. I don't know why it's here. Other than world building, D tier. At least the characters have names, which is something I can't say for the next mission, which is Ezekiel Saw The Wheel. This one's going right into the F tier. This mission blows.
Think a sense of humor is gonna get you out of this? You know who always dies first? Funny people like you.
This is effectively a 1 minute mission, maybe two if I'm being generous. You, as V, walk into a diner, you order something, and then something else happens. In practice, it's the same as A Day in the Life, where you sit down at a place, order something, and then an event happens. The difference here is that this event is much less interesting to me. It might be more interesting to you, but for me, it's the less interesting of the two. You sit down, you order your thing, and then the building is being robbed. And you can do one of two things. You can either be robbed or threaten them if your body stat is high enough. Whoop-de-doo. Much like A Day in the Life, you could argue that this is a world-building thing. It kind of establishes the tone of what Santo Domingo is really like. Fine. In terms of gameplay, it doesn't really exist. I don't know. I don't really, again, aside from world building, what does this mission really give us? And I don't know what the answer is, so I really don't have anything to say about this one. F tier mission. It's short, so, at least it's not 40 minutes and boring. But the characters don't even have names. This guy's name just Ganger, and this guy is just diner owner or diner chef or something to that effect. And again, it ends with you get free. You can shop there and you get free things from the consumables, the food seller. again, as I talked about with Day in the Life, your mileage on consumable items may vary, but I don't know. I just don't understand that mission at all. All right, next up, and this might be another controversial one, but we have the mission Over the Edge. That's an F tier as well.
Got us a cyber psycho! Raise max tack now!
This is the, as the name would imply, the Edge Runners mission. The only Edge Runners mission in the game. The Cyberpunk Edge Runners, if you don't know, is an anime show that released a couple years after Cyberpunk 2077 came out. It's loosely connected to everything. It follows character David Martinez and girl Lucy as they navigate life in Night City and find connection in each other. This mission stinks. It's barely a mission. There's barely any content associated with it. Basically, V walks up to a brain dance thing. If you don't know, brain dances are essentially movies that get beamed directly into your brain. But he walks up to a brain dance, watches it. It's the first 5 or so minutes of the animated TV show on Netflix. And then he texts El Capitan, says, "Hey, what's the deal with this?" And El Capitan says, "I don't know, I'll figure it out." And then several in-game days later, a Falco, who may or may not be a character on the show, I don't remember, shows up and says, "Hey, stop looking into us because we'll fuck you up," or something like that. It's vaguely threatening. But they say, "Hey, we gave something to El Capitan to give you." So then you drive to where El Capitan hangs out and you get David's jacket from the show. Yeah, so this might be an opinion that I don't need to share, but we'll go to the tangent zone for a bit on this one. I don't really care for Cyberpunk Edge Runners that much. I liked it when I watched it. I thought it was good. I thought it was entertaining. I thought the characters were fine. But I didn't think it was like the second coming, like some people, like the way some people talk about that show, you would think it was like the greatest thing of all time. I think it's good. I don't think it's great. So this, to the point though, this mission doesn't do a ton for me. Getting David's jacket is cool. And I dressed my V in David's jacket for at least 4 or 5 hours of gameplay. But it's a first-person game. You don't really see V that often, so for me, what they wear doesn't matter all that much. So, if you're a fan of the show, this might do something for you. If you're a diehard fan of the show, I should say, this might do something for you. For me, it didn't really do anything. Hardly any gameplay, no storyline to speak of. A bunch of text messages from people who CDPR couldn't bother to get back in the studio to record dialogue. That's why it's in the F tier. It might bump up to a D tier if I liked the show more than I do. For now, I just think the show's good, but not spectacular, so that's why it's in the F tier. Next mission is going to be Space Oddity, and that's going to find itself in the C tier.
Well, who knew Johnny Silverhand's a lover of fine art?
Not me. One of my exes. She was a painter. Bona fide psycho, like all of them. The sex, though, can't even begin to describe it.
So, Space Oddity is a mission where you stumble across some homeless guys and they're investigating this laptop. You can either pay them for it or intimidate them for it. Essentially, it's a chase. When you investigate the laptop, you find the location of a piece of something, you don't really know what, that came down from the moon. And you get there, and there's a couple guys there, and you kill them, and then you get the thing from the moon. The reason this falls in the C tier, where it otherwise might fall into the D tier, is you have a pretty fun conversation with Johnny once you get there and you figure out what this Space Oddity actually is. So you get a pretty fun conversation with Johnny. The gameplay's not that interesting. There's a couple ways you can get the laptop, and then there's a couple ways you can get into the laptop. You can either find the guy's dead body and grab the card there, or you can just hack into it if your intelligence stat is high enough. So there's a couple different ways to approach the mission. The combat gameplay that exists is very simple. There's 6 or 7 guys, and they're all positioned in such a way to where you can very easily just stealth kill them all. So, The reason this falls in the C tier is because of the conversation with Johnny that you get after the mission, and even the homeless guys beforehand as well. For characters that don't really do anything, they have a lot of character to them. So that's why it falls in the C tier, but otherwise it's a relatively unremarkable mission. Not a whole lot to say about that one. Next one's going to be another C tier mission. This is going to be Stadium Love.
The hell you want?
Is that a trick question? This is a party, right?
Stadium Love is a mostly inoffensive mission. You go to a 6th Street gang party, and they ask you to, or you ask yourself really, to join into their shooting gallery. And you run around to about 4 or so shooting range stations, and you shoot some targets. There's never more than 12 targets per station, and they give you plenty of time to hit them all. They try to add an interesting gimmick beforehand by having you take a shot before you participate in each one. And maybe if the effects of alcohol in Cyberpunk lasted a little bit longer than they do, that might be interesting. So by the 4th shooting range, you're like completely sloshed. It actually makes it quite difficult to do it. But the problem with the way this alcohol works on hard difficulty, at least, is by the time you get to the next station, the effects of the previous one have already worn off. It's okay. The reward at the end is pretty good. You get a iconic weapon at the very end as your reward. That's very nice. And alternatively, you also could just kill everyone there and take the weapon for yourself. They are the 6th Street gang. They are a morally abhorrent gang, so no one would fault you for doing that. So there's a couple ways to approach the mission. The mission itself, though, if you engage with it on its terms, is not that interesting. Johnny doesn't contribute at all. The reason it falls in the C tier instead of the D tier is that iconic weapon reward. And they try to do something interesting with taking shots before each gallery, but there's larger issues therein. And our last side job before we move on into the main quests that we're going to talk about in Santo Domingo, the Highwayman, which is going to find itself in the B tier.
Fuck. What a way to go.
No way's a good way, V. I'd know.
Now, if you've played Cyberpunk before and this mission doesn't sound familiar to you, there's a good reason for that. This is a secret mission, meaning that it's not marked on your map. No one gives it to you. You have to seek this one out yourself. It's one that you can find organically just in the world. There's a garage near where the Stadium Love mission takes place that if you open it and go inside, you'll see a trashed motorcycle, which Johnny will remark on, and then you'll find a laptop to where you'll eventually get this quest line. It's not the most thrilling quest line in the world. It's a lot of driving from point A to B and talking to people or scanning people or whatever the case may be. So it's not the most gameplay thrilling, but the reason this falls into the B tier pretty squarely is how interesting I think the storyline is. It's essentially about two lovers. The woman in this relationship gets herself a little in too deep with tiger claws. He's worried about it, and you can kind of unravel the mystery from there. So you're looking for her, and the reward at the end of the quest is a fairly decent motorcycle. It has a utility. It's not just a gun that may or not be useful to whatever build you're playing. And again, it sort of plays into that more investigative stuff that Cyberpunk likes to do from time to time. I think Cyberpunk fancies itself as a noir mystery sometimes, and this kind of plays into that. Gameplay-wise, it's not the most engaging thing in the world. Storyline, I am intrigued by, but having played it, I don't know if I'd be interested in doing it again. The one or two characters you do meet are rich for what little content they actually have. It's an interesting mission. That being said, while I do like it, and it is in the B tier, I don't necessarily know if it's worth taking the time to find this location and then find the following location thereafter. The first two quest objectives, one finding the mission, and then the first quest objective in the mission line, neither of them have waypoints. You have to find them, and there are clues to get you there, but I can see why that would be cumbersome or tedious to certain players. So, fun mission, interesting mission, one I like to talk about, but it's not ever going to crest anywhere higher than it is in B tier. If we were tiering it within the tiers, this would be pretty low B tier, closer to a C than an A. And now we're going to get into the main quest lines, the main missions for this one. Santo Domingo is interesting in that it does not have a single main quest mission that starts in it. I think there's maybe one or two missions that take you there, but nothing actually starts here, which is interesting. So Santo Domingo kind of stands out in that way, where there's no main missions associated with it. There's no long-term story arcs really associated with it. The Sinnerman stuff, but we're going to talk about that in another episode. It's not enough to justify it on its own. So I'm going to be talking about, instead of just ending the video here, I'm going to be talking about all the stuff in Act 1 of the game. Everything from Sandra Dorset's rescue at the scav haunt all the way through to the heist, and then dying, Johnny Silverhand's memories, meeting Takamura, and kind of building out the game plan from then on. We'll be talking about all of that stuff in the main story segment, starting with the rescue, which is the first real mission in the game, the second true mission in the game, and that one's going to fall into the B tier.
She took a liking to you.
The devotion I demonstrated grabbed her by the gut.
Right.
The rescue is the rescue of Sandra Dorset from the scav haunt. It's a real tremendous introductory mission to Night City, to Jackie, to T-Bug, it introduces you to Fixers, MaxTac, the different districts. It introduces you to Watson. It introduces you to a lot of different things. And it continues on into the next couple missions that we'll talk about here in a minute. The gameplay itself as an introduction is fine. My problem with the rescue, and the reason why I couldn't in good faith put it in the A tier, much as I might have otherwise, is that it does feel a little redundant as an introduction to Jackie, as an introduction to gameplay, which we'll talk about with the next mission here in a minute, as to why gameplay introduction feels a little redundant. But there is enough other stuff that it introduces you to: Fixers, MaxTac, Night City, the different districts, scav haunts, trauma team, stuff like that. It's doing a lot of heavy lifting, and it actually does it in a really smart way to where you are being inundated with constant information, hypo sprays, things, all of that stuff. You're constantly being inundated with new information, but it's done in such a way to where it doesn't feel overwhelming, even though it definitely is. So it's really smartly written, but the reason it does fall into that B tier category is that it does feel a little redundant in terms of the character work, and it feels a little redundant in terms of the gameplay. All the other stuff is great. All the world building stuff and the new characters that do get introduced in this chapter, Sandra Dorset, who we see a little bit later in some side missions, Wakako Okada, who's one of the Fixers, and T-Bug, all that stuff's good. It does feel a little repetitive to have a lengthy mission. If the Sandra Dorset scav haunt was maybe about 10 minutes shorter, I think it'd be okay. But I understand they have to introduce you to a lot of different concepts, even within that one context. I can praise it from a video game writing and world-building writing standpoint, but in terms of gameplay, it's not the most engaging thing in the world. So it does fall a little bit lower than it perhaps otherwise would have been. And then in terms of Jackie's introduction, it does do a great job in fleshing out Jackie and showing the growth in friendship over the montage sequence after the introductory missions. However, as we'll talk about with the eventual introductory missions as we talk about them within their specific districts, we kind of already have an introduction to Jackie, so spending more time with him in order to flesh out that relationship does eventually pay off with how that storyline ends, but until you get there, introducing us to Jackie again doesn't make a ton of sense. It establishes a relationship with Misty, which is fine. But again, it just feels like we're kind of retreading old territory that we just finished treading, if that makes sense. Good mission, don't misunderstand, but it does feel a little repetitive, much like I probably sound right about now. And then we have Practice Makes Perfect. That's going to end up right here in the C tier.
Now, Station 1, you maggot! Move, move, move! Hope you're ready to bust ass through this fascist playground.
You may be wondering, why the hell are you talking about this? This is a gameplay tutorial. There's very little characterization. What's the point? And to that I say, I said every quest in Cyberpunk, goddammit, and this is a separate journal entry, so we're going to talk about it. It's a gameplay tutorial that you get from T-Bug. Technically Jackie gives it to you, but it's pretty fair characterization for T-Bug. You get more characterization for T-Bug in this singular tutorial mission than you do in the rescue and you do for the entirety of Act 1. T-Bug is kind of a flat character if you don't play this mission, but if you play this mission, it does flesh her out a bit more, so that when she does eventually die, playing this mission actually, you almost feel something. You still don't, but you almost feel something. There was never a world where this would ever be placed higher or lower than C tier. It's just a gameplay tutorial. It introduces you to the shooting mechanics, it introduces you to stealth and quick hacks and the melee combat. It comes a little bit late, because the introductory chapters, when you pick V's life path, whether it be Nomad, Street Kid, or Corpo, you have a full-length, about 20-minute long mission, roughly, for each of those that just kind of drops you into it, and they each only really introduce you to one mechanic, whether it be mostly driving with the Nomad, or, fights and brawling with the Street Kid, or the conversation system with the Corpo Rat, but still, you might already be familiar with some of these mechanics, so it does come a little late into the game, but it's a tutorial. It was never going to be anywhere else other than C tier. It's perfectly fine. It communicates everything it needs to communicate. Nicely, it characterizes a character who otherwise didn't have that much characterization, so pretty solid mission. Okay, I'm going to talk about the next two missions kind of in conjunction, but it's going to be the Ripperdoc and the Ride. They're both going to fall into the C tier.
Mind if I ask you something right off the bangle? Would you rather live in pieces, Mr. Nobody, die ripe, old, and smelling slightly of urine, or go down for all times in a blaze of glory, smelling near like posies, without seeing your 30th?
You're either somebody or you fizzle out into nothing. Night City don't let you choose.
So the reason I'm talking about these together, and why they're both fall into the C tier, is they are both very expository missions and introductory missions to, in the case of the Ripperdoc, certain mechanics in the game, and then in the case of the Ride, just the setting up the heist, the big moment at the end of Act 1. The Ripperdoc starts with you and Jackie going to Victor's clinic, and then you get some cyberware enhancements. You can finally see your ammo count. You get some slightly better optics. I forget exactly what they give you, but... And then that's essentially it. There's also this cat that you have to pet. You have to pet the cat, both on your way in and on your way out, so don't you forget to do that. It's okay. It introduces you to Misty. It gives some further characterization to Jackie. Introduces you to Victor. And it's good at establishing all these things and setting all this stuff up. However, it's not the most thrilling thing to play. This is also your introduction into the actual cyberware mechanic and how you install it and what things can do for you and blah, 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 blah. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly functional. And the same also goes for the Ride. This one is you meet with Dex Deshawn and you drive around with him for a bit, and he kind of sets up the Konpeki Plaza heist. He introduces the biochip that Johnny Silverhand is on and a couple other things. He introduces you to Evelyn Parker and the fact that he's a fixer and the mentality of people who live in Night City, Quiet Life or Blaze of Glory and all that nonsense. It's a really dense world-building mission. It sets up Dex, it sets up V's characters really well. If it wasn't already established with the previous missions, the type of person that V is or V has become. It's really dense. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of discussion about how certain things work. It suffers from the same problem as the Ripperdoc, where, in theory, I like all of the things that it introduces, but in practice, it's not a thrilling mission to play. That's why both of them fall into the C tier for me. Fun enough missions, but never fun replays. They're fine on the first playthrough, but they diminish with subsequent playthroughs, is all I'm saying. Next up, we have The Pickup, which is the greatest mission in the game so far. That's going right into the S tier, easily.
Yeah, I want to make sure, We're good together. I like how we do things.
I do too, V. I do too.
The reason this one's going squarely in the S tier, with no question as to why, is this is like the greatest single RPG mission I think I've ever played in any game ever, which is high praise. It's so excellent. It establishes character dynamic with Jackie and V. It establishes their kind of working relationship. It establishes great character moments with Jackie that make his eventual demise make a lot more sense. He's a little hot-headed. He doesn't really listen to people when maybe he should. He's very disrespectful to people he thinks are worse than him or bad people. He's sort of impulsive with his purchase of the motorcycle that he can't afford as sort of a preemptive reward for the heist that he is kind of has rose-tinted glasses for. It's just tremendous characterization for Jackie, way better than anything else that Jackie does in the game, this mission. And I think it gets overlooked a little bit because of that. I think people in the moment are sort of taken in by all the stuff with Maelstrom and Militech with Meredith Stout and the stuff with Gilchrist and all these other things. And then when you're in the Maelstrom base, the previous leader of Maelstrom is like tied up and he's like a prisoner and you can free him or you can leave him. I feel like people, when they play this mission, get sort of wrapped up in all of that other stuff that they miss the really excellent characterization for both V, but especially for Jackie in this mission. It's really, really phenomenal stuff. All that stuff's great. The gameplay is excellent as well. The All Foods Factory is a fun arena to play around in. There's a couple different ways to approach it in terms of just raw gameplay, not even talking about the story ways to approach the mission, which we will talk about in a moment. It introduces us to some really excellent characters that just make the world and the city itself feel so much more rich than it did before. It doesn't really feel like a video game world. There's stuff going on behind the scenes that you are not privy to. All this junk with Militech and Meredith Stout and Gilchrist, it feels real. We barely even get a glimpse into what's actually going on there. And it just feels so rich, it feels lived in. The stuff with Royce and the previous leader of Maelstrom, all that stuff, we get a glimpse into that. But again, it enforces the idea that this world is lived in, that this world is real. And again, it's something that I feel like you can sort of take for granted on a first playthrough, and this is kind of stuff that you notice more when you're analyzing every single mission and putting them on an arbitrary tier ranking between S and F. But it's so dense, there's so much going on in this mission, there's so much it sets up that the game doesn't follow on, because it doesn't have to. This is a real city. There's millions of people in this city, and they're all living their own lives, and they all have their own problems, and things change, and, go to shit, and there's corporate espionage, and all this stuff. V's life paths can sort of play into your discussions with Meredith here, whether you're a nomad or a corpo or even a street kid. It's all really, 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 really stellar stuff. And that's just on a story level. Gameplay-wise, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of fun stuff here. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. You have a pretty, frankly, boring, I'll say, boss fight with Royce. You can avoid this boss fight completely, which we'll talk about in a second. But the boss fight isn't that interesting. You do get a pretty neat-looking iconic weapon from it, but And the last reason it easily slides into the S tier is because of how many different ways you and V and Jackie can approach the situation. There's something like technically 11 different outcomes to this mission, or 11 different ways to pursue the mission and actually get the flathead in your possession, which is what you're there for in the first place. There's so many outcomes and ways to pursue this mission. Jackie starts losing his cool, and you can just let him lose his cool, and the mission kind of goes down a different path that way, in which you steal the flathead from Maelstrom. You can pay with your own money, essentially paying for the piece twice, because Dex has said that he's already paid for it. You can essentially pay for it twice, and in which case that's like the pacifist route. If you do that, you don't have to fight anyone. They just give you the flathead and you're free to go. You can pull a gun on Royce when he starts taunting you and kind of hold it to his head, and even that has a couple ways that can play out. You can just shoot him, you can take him down, you can pay anyways, and just, a little bravado. That has many options. You can pay with a bugged Militech card, which then results in a big fight with Maelstrom. You can warn them about the bug on the Militech card, in which case it evolves into a big fight with Militech. You can meet with Meredith Stout, and then when she offers to pay with a bug card, you can deny her request, and then Gilchrist ends up on top. There's 1,000,001 different ways that this mission can play out on each subsequent playthrough, and it's going to look different for every single person and how they've kind of understand the world and how they kind of approach missions and stuff like that. That I just think it's really excellent. And here's the thing, truth be told, how your version of this mission plays out doesn't matter all that much in like the grand scheme of things. We don't really visit Maelstrom ever again in a meaningful capacity, I should say. Militech is kind of put to the wayside. If you don't side with Meredith Stout, you miss out on like one side quest. That's essentially just kind of a joke, fan servicey side quest anyways. So again, you can decide for yourself whether or not you're missing anything there. We'll talk about that mission when we get to Watson. But it's so detailed, and there's so much going on, both world building wise and character development wise, and gameplay wise, and outcomes, and just writing of the actual story itself. It's really spectacular stuff, and that's why it goes in the S tier for me. It is, so far, I know it doesn't say that here, but it is at the top of the S tier. This is the gold standard right now. Every other main mission will be judged against the pickup to see if they come even close. So far, having played almost about, I would say like 50-60% of the game at time of recording, nothing comes close to this. There are things that will fall into the S tier, but this is still king. Really spectacular mission. I love it so much. More missions like this, less missions like the next one we're going to talk about right now. I really hate to do this, but the next mission is the information, and that's going in the D tier.
Why not say hello sooner?
I wanted to get a good look at you first.
And? Like what you see?
If I didn't, rest assured, you'd know.
This is the one where you go meet Evelyn Parker and Judy, and you get, as the name would suggest, information about the mission. A lot of information about the mission. I understand why this mission is laid out the way it is. It's giving the player information. It has a lot to do with as much time as it needs to do it, but I think the pacing struggles. I get why it struggles. So that's why it's in D tier, not F tier. Because in terms of gameplay, there's very little to speak of. It's a lot of conversating with primarily Evelyn, and a little bit with Judy, and a little bit with T-Bug. So I wrote down everything that you do in this mission, just so we can all be on the same page as to why this is a D tier mission. First, you start with a little chat with a bouncer outside the bar. Then you get let inside and you have a little chat with the bartender inside the bar. And then you have a long chat with Evelyn, both at the bar and then in a private room. I don't know how much of this footage I can show, because they decided to put a holographic stripper in this room. And then you have a little chat with Judy, and then you get a tutorial on brain dance controls, and then you do a completely different brain dance with T-Bug, and then you have another little chat with Evelyn thereafter. For transparency's sake, the tutorial on how to work brain dances is skippable. I chose to do it for the sake of trying to get the most experience I could out of these missions. What path can I do to exhaust as much dialogue as I can? Which paths can I take to get the most gameplay? Anything that could improve the pace or whatever the case may be, right? It's coded so that they're expecting you to do the brain dance tutorial, because at this point in the game, it is a 100% certainty that this is your first brain dance, but it is skippable, which might improve the pacing a little bit for you. Brain dances aren't particularly complicated. I don't think there needed to be a whole separate brain dance that you watch with Judy for a tutorial. I feel like it's something that can be cut and just have you tutorialized with the actual brain dance that's plot relevant, and also just in terms of the text and subtext, far more interesting than the tutorial brain dance. So I get it, right? This has to set up Evelyn Parker, who's a major character and a major factor and a major player in planning this heist and getting all the pieces in place. It has to introduce Yorinobu Arasaka, who is one of the major players for the entire game. So it has to set up Yorinobu, it has to set up Evelyn's relationship to Yorinobu, it has to plant the seeds of doubt in both the player and V, in both Dexter Deshawn and Evelyn Parker. It has to introduce you to Judy Alvarez, who is one of the romance options and is also one of the major players in both the main story and has her own lengthy quest line. It has to introduce you to dolls and brain dances and the concept of joy toys and all of this stuff. It introduces you to Adam Smasher. It cements your relationship with T-Bug a bit more. It cements Judy's distrust of anyone outside of the Moxes or anyone that she knows personally. It's doing a lot of work. It has to establish Evelyn as having this sort of facade of confidence and like she's got it all together, but still sow seeds of doubt in that facade. It has to plant seeds in the player that the heist is not very well planned, which it isn't, by anyone involved, whether it be Dex or Evelyn or Jackie or whoever. So it has to do a lot of work. It's called the information. They're setting the expectation with the title of the mission, but that doesn't mean it's particularly fun on repeat playthroughs. It is one that only gets worse and worse every time you play it, because on repeat playthroughs you already know all this information already. So it does kind of fall in that same zone as like the Ripperdoc and the Ride, where it feels a little redundant on repeat playthroughs, and thank God for that skip option. You can skip through all of this dialogue, and instead of having the mission take about 40 minutes, you can get it done in about 3. So, and I can commend it purely from a like writing standpoint. It does it well. I don't think the content of the mission is bad, but the execution of it leaves a little bit to be desired, if that makes sense. All right, and now we'll talk about the actual heist itself, which is the next one after this, and that's going in the A tier.
Misty, she knew. She always knew.
So you might be thinking to yourself, why the hell is this only an A-tier mission? This is one of the most memorable missions in the game. It's one of the most cinematic missions in the game. It sets up the main plot for the rest of the game, the main plot that you're going to be exploring for the next 30 to 70 hours. Why the hell is this only in the A-tier? There's a couple reasons for this. This is an excellent mission. Do not misunderstand. This is a really spectacular mission. There's a couple things that pull it back, for me, from the S tier. For one, it's pretty linear. There's not that much room for different outcomes, and the different outcomes that you do get, you don't really see the aftershocks of. The only things you can really control is whether or not you reveal to Dex that Evelyn Parker asked you to cut him out of the deal, or whether or not you stay quiet about that. And the only other choice you can make is where does Delamain take Jackie's body? And even that is something that you don't really get to see the aftershocks of. You hear about it and people talk to you about it in a mission we'll talk about when we get to Haywood, but it's something that you don't get to see, so the choice feels next to meaningless. And all the pertinent characters who need to know that Jackie's dead find out regardless of where you send Delamain to take Jackie's body. And those are the only two major choices that you really get. Everything else is very linear, which is totally fine. I understand wanting to kind of set that tone and have a more structured thing. When it is more linear, you can better control pacing and tone and character moments and what have you. So I get the appeal to have a big main quest like this be strictly very linear, especially one that sets up the plot line for the rest of the game. So I get it. But for me, it is a little disappointing, especially when we just played the pickup, which had so much variation into how that can play out. You get a pretty good send-off, all things considered, for Jackie, which is a character that the player doesn't really get to connect with, but I don't have a problem with Jackie and Jackie dying the way I've heard some players talk about it. Some people say they don't care when Jackie dies, and I think that's fine. I think it's okay to not really feel anything when a character dies, because either the relationship with the player hasn't been established, or maybe the writing wasn't that good, or the voice acting wasn't that good. I don't think that's the case for Jackie. I think Jackie is a great character and has a lot more depth to him than people give him credit for. But I totally understand why there was a disconnect for players between them and V, because V seems to take Jackie's death very hard. I take it hard when I play it, but I do understand why there might be a disconnect. All things considered, we don't spend that much time with Jackie, and Jackie, as a friend character to V, does behave a little differently to how other friend characters behave towards V. And I should also say, as a reminder to some players, because I feel like there is a disconnect here that happens. Yes, you can create V. Yes, you can make V a, male, female, and everything in between. Yes, you can customize their hair and their eyes and their history, but at the end of the day, V is a character. You are playing V. V is not you. So, for me, Jackie's death works because regardless of whether or not it affects me personally, it clearly affects V. And it changes how V approaches everything from this moment on. And I think that's something that players should remember. It's the same thing with like Geralt and, Commander Shepard to a lesser extent. And Hawk in Dragon Age, right? You're not playing you. Yes, you can customize them, but you're not playing you. This isn't a blank slate character that you can This is a character who makes their own decisions, who has their own feelings and their own relationships that might be different from yours. V might think Jackie is their best friend in the whole wide world, and that seems to be the case. You might not, but just keep that in mind. You're not playing yourself. You're playing V. Long-winded tangent to say that all of the stuff in the heist works for me. It's just a little linear. I wish there was better implementation of some of the choices you made. I wish there was a bit more character building and relationship building between Jackie and V. All things considered, you don't actually spend that much time with Jackie, despite the fact that Jackie and V have spent somewhere in the neighborhood of like a year plus as friends, depending on which life path you pick at the start of the game. So, I also, really quick, and I almost forgot to mention this, I want to point out this beautiful soundscape in the car in Delamain. When Jackie dies and you get to the motel where you're going to meet with Dex, it's so haunting and beautiful, and all the pieces work. The muffled rain, the music, it's so incredible.
Give me a sec, will you?
Mr. Wells's remains. Where shall I take them?
Next up, we have Love Like Fire. That's also going in the A tier.
Get over here, man. Fuck this band. Not your crowd, not your noise. Do your own thing.
Bastard. Gonna miss you something awful.
See you in the next life, friend.
Love Like Fire is an A tier mission. I had originally, what I did is I recorded the mission as I played it for this playthrough, and then I immediately ranked it, just based on the vibes of how I felt when I finished the mission. I immediately ranked it. And then what I did all these weeks later, as I finally record, is I went back and I watched my footage in its entirety. Based on how the memories of playing said mission triggered in my head, I might have moved them a rank or two. Never anything particularly extreme, right? The Rescue moved from a C tier to a B tier, right? Love Like Fire moved from a B tier to an A tier, right? So it was never huge shifts. Pickup moved from an A tier to an S tier. The Heist moved from an S tier to an A tier, right? Like small one tier changes, so nothing terribly dramatic. And most of it stayed exactly where it is. But to my point, I bumped this one up from a B tier because when I wasn't preoccupied with just the part of my brain that had to be used up for the raw mechanics of WSAD and aiming and finding people and all that jazz, I was able to just take in the mission's atmosphere and writing and acting and sound design and all that lovely stuff that can sometimes be missed as you're just actually playing. And this is a fucking masterclass in how to establish character, many different characters, but primarily one character. Not even like 3 minutes into this mission, and we already understand everything we need to know about Johnny Silverhand. He's abrasive, he pushes people away, he's rude and cruel to people, but deep down underneath it all, he is very caring to people he loves and trusts. He's a hard person to like, and you could argue whether or not he's even a good person, but immediately we understand everything about Johnny. And they don't like sit you down. They don't park you down. It all feels very natural. And just as you're playing, it's such great. It's a great piece to study if you want to know how to convey character extremely economically with very few actual choices. And Keanu Reeves he's just so good. He's so good in this role. There's a couple line reads. I'll play this line read right here, which feels a little silly.
Why did you do this?
To bring an end to the madness you wreak.
But he's 98% of the time, he's really excellent in this role. But this mission got bumped up to me. The gameplay itself is just kind of but the character work, and for not just Johnny, but also Rogue, who we get introduced to in the heist, but we don't actually really see in a meaningful capacity until this mission. But Rogue, Johnny, Carrie, even Spider Murphy, there's a character that means next to nothing, is characterized so brilliantly with just a few lines of dialogue and some excellent voiceover performance. It's really excellent. It's really, really good. I like this mission quite a bit. It's not quite S tier because, again, it is a little linear. It's very short as well, which is totally fine with me. But really great mission all around. Not quite S tier, though. And the last mission we're going to talk about for this video is Playing for Time, which is a sort of transitionary mission from Act 1 into Act 2 and the rest of the game. It's going in the B tier.
Zapper dumples and filth. In some ways, Night City never changes. Arasaka's still a despotic machine and the world's on a collision course with chaos. But hey, at least Rogue's still alive.
Side note, I like the little adjustment that happens after V gets Johnny Silverhand's engram chip. The little adjustment to how quests are named, main quests and side jobs specifically, where all of a sudden they start getting named after songs, song titles. As music becomes a more important thing in V's life, I think that's a kind of cute little adjustment. In any event, Playing for Time, B tier. This, like the information, has a lot of information to get across to the player, but I think is a good mission to juxtapose to the information and how to do it better. It has to establish V and Johnny's relationship going forward. It has to introduce conflict there while also resolving it in a smart way where they kind of agree to, to a ceasefire, for lack of a better term. It has to introduce 3 different branching quest lines as to where V goes next to try to fix this issue with Johnny. But it has a lot to set up. It has to get V out of the dumpster, establish why V's alive. It has to establish the main plot going forward. It has to establish relationships to Takamura and Johnny and deepen the bond with Misty and Victor and wrap up any loose ends from the heist itself with Dex. And it has a lot to do, but I think does it so much smarter and with better pacing than the information did as a comparison. I understand that the exposition that the information is giving you is very different than the exposition Playing for Time is giving you, but this mission introduces a couple characters and I think does it a lot better than this mission, who also introduces more characters and I think does it worse. So it's not the most engaging mission gameplay-wise. There's a pretty fun little cinematic chase scene with Takamura and some Arasaka assassins. That's cool. I like the fight, effectively, between Johnny and V in V's apartment, where both of them kind of realize what their situation is. I like the chat with Takamura and Johnny in the diner afterwards. I love this moment with Misty. I love the part with Victor. There's a lot of stuff to like about this mission. It's not the most fun mission to play, though. There isn't a ton of gameplay associated with it. It's very dense. There's a lot of information. But it feels like it's done smartly without sacrificing the pacing as well. And then we're going to go into a little bit of a tangent here. I have to talk about Act 1 as a whole. I'm just going to rate Act 1 right now. Act 1 as a whole, meaning from the rescue to playing for time. Technically, playing for time is an Act 2 mission, but just for the sake of simplicity, let's talk about it as if it's part of Act 1. Act 1 probably on the whole falls into like a high C, low B tier. There is a worse version of Cyberpunk that starts at the beginning of Act 2, and I have to assume that's why the game was delayed as many times as it was. It's a more complicated plot than I think people realize it is, and from a writing standpoint, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of these developers, and I'm getting a headache, and I didn't even work on it. There's so many moving pieces, and you want to pay it off and reward the thorough player for paying attention to all this stuff, but it's really hard to do with just how the story is structured. There's a lot of characters, and there's a lot of different pieces in place, and it needs Act 1 for the player to better appreciate some of the payoffs later. So there is a worse version of Cyberpunk that starts with the heist, where you just start off with the heist and you don't have any of that build up. And there's also a worse version of Cyberpunk that starts with waking up in the dump, in the landfill, right? So Act 1, while kind of a tedious replay, story-wise and writing-wise is kind of necessary. And again, I have to assume the story, more so than the mechanics and gameplay, was why the game was delayed as many times as it was. Although clearly, as we saw at launch, the gameplay and mechanics weren't exactly finished either. I can't imagine how much work and effort and headaches and long nights went into writing this game and its main plot, and then adding wrinkles in with Phantom Liberty years later. I can't imagine how difficult it is, and I have to give props and praise to CD Projekt Red for managing to make not only a cohesive story that is fulfilling to play and feels rewarding and well written, but a campaign that also rewards the player, doesn't treat the player like a fool, and also just has really well written, excellent characters. It would have been all too easy for the characters to be sort of stock and whatever, because the plot is as dense as it is, but no, they actually take the time to establish character, and I think that's really awesome, and I have to give CDPR props for that. So that's it for Santo Domingo. I know I haven't talked about Santo Domingo in quite a bit of runtime now, and we've been talking about missions that take place in Watson, but this is the nature of how I decided to format these videos, and it's too late now to go back. So the reason I did this ultimately was because there's no way I was going to get Watson done first. I had originally planned to do Watson first, because it makes sense with Act 1 taking place entirely in Watson. So I'd originally planned to do Watson first, but Watson has so many missions that trigger at different times. Some of them don't even trigger until you're well through Phantom Liberty, which is the last thing I'm going to do. So that's why I kind of lumped this stuff and moved some things around. It should make more sense going forward why I talk about certain quest lines in certain districts. Next time we're going to be talking about the Badlands, and that'll include Pan Am's quest line, everything from meeting Rogue in Afterlife and getting the mission to help Pan Am get her truck back, all the way through to the stuff with the Basilisk and the Aldecaldo's moving camp. It's also going to include all the gigs that take place there and all the side jobs that take place there and all that fun stuff. So that video should be out hopefully pretty soon after this one comes out. There's only one more mission I have to play in the Badlands in order to, start recording this part of that video. So hopefully that should be up pretty soon after this one. And then after that, we're going to be talking about City Center, which that will take a little bit longer. I have barely touched the City Center stuff. There's not that much to do in the City Center. So that one might be a little bit after. I'll try to pump out maybe a video in between. I apologize for any technical stuff going on. This is kind of a new setup for me, new environment. There's background noise, all that jazz. I tried to iron it out in between recordings. Anyways, that's all. There's other stuff I want to talk about, but I'll save it for other videos. I already did my tangent about the story. I want to do a tangent about the world design as well, but that can wait for the next time because I already did my end of video tangent about the writing. But yeah, that's it. I don't know when the next one's going to be out, but hopefully soon. Hopefully pretty soon, maybe a couple weeks if I get my ass into gear. But that's all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and take care.